Phillips. Today I'm going to show you how to change the starter on a Pontiac Fiero GT. So let's go underneath and let's get started with that. Here on the starter you have two 15mm bolts, one here, the other one's a little further up right there. But you also have to remember you have to disconnect the two bolts there from the back of the solenoid. Now before you get started with anything like this, please disconnect the ground on your battery, which you should do anytime you're working on a vehicle like this. Get rid of the power. So let's go ahead and take the two 15mm off, and then we'll go ahead and remove the bolts there from the solenoid so we can get this starter out of here. Okay, some of these bolts can be pretty tight. This one here was a little seized on there, so you may need a breaker bar depending how long the starter's been sitting. All right, we have the two bolts loosened. You can see there. So now we're going to remove the bolts there on the solenoid. You're looking at a 15mm on the top connection and an 8mm on the bottom. So let's go ahead and detach those and we can get the starter out of here. Make sure you put that in a safe place. There's also a little washer here. You want to salvage that as well. And then we can go ahead and remove that. Okay, now for the lower one, the 8mm, I'm going to be using one of these Cobalt universal sockets. These are good because you've got all those teeth in there, because when you're dealing with these older bolts, only God knows if they're going to be stripped or what's going to happen. So there we go. And just like with the one above it, there's a little washer right here. You want to make sure you don't lose that. And you can slide that off. Everything's connected. Everything is disconnected right here. So now we can drop the starter. All right, now there's a little, like a little bracket thing. Make sure you don't lose that. That goes across there on the starter. So we've got the starter loose and out. So let's go ahead and pull that down. A little tight with the exhaust pipe. There we go. Okay, here's where the starter's going to go. You're going to have it right here, going into the flywheel right here where the teeth are going to meet. And then you have your two entry points here for the bolts. So let's go ahead and get that new one back in place so we can go ahead and get everything connected. I found the best way to get it in is right here in between the exhaust pipe and this section of the frame here. However, you've got a little panel right here. If you want to take it off, that'll probably make it easier. I just kind of had to squeeze it through there, but it was a very tight squeeze. Had to kind of work it through, but I did get it back in place. So there it is up in there. So now we can go ahead and mount it and start tightening the bolts. Okay. Hand tightening this lower one just to get everything situated, but I wanted to show you, you got to remember to put the bracket. You'll see there's a bracket all the way up here. That has to go across from this bolt here and then the other one down on the lower end. So that bridges across, so you need to slide that in and then run the bolts through that. So that's what we're doing now. That's a little tricky to get it adjusted, but we got it in there. Tighten it. You're going to have to use an extension, as mentioned before, in order to get up in there. I'm using about a 13 or 14 inch extension on my ratchet, so you can get all the way up in there. We'll go ahead and tighten it. You can see in there, that's the that piece I mentioned about that you need to make sure you put that in. That bridges between the two bolts. So let's go ahead and finish tightening this up, and then we'll tighten up the bottom one, connect solenoids, and that wraps this up. Tighten the lower one. And there's a shot of the starter in place. You can see it going in there, and then we're going to go ahead and just connect the solenoid up top and wrap it up. All right, make sure not to over tighten them. I think that's good. Well, that wraps it up for today on how to put a starter into a Pontiac Fiero GT. At this point, you can now go ahead and you can reconnect your battery's ground and get the power going. Please send any questions, any comments. I would love to hear from you. As always, we appreciate your support. Please like this video, subscribe to this channel. Thank you, and we'll see you next time.